You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to call the Select Board meeting of Tuesday, August 28th to order. And the first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any changes? I have two changes before. We're going to add, like to add 4A, a discussion of the condition of Blue Spruce Motel, considering lodging a zoning complaint, and item 13A, a grant agreement with Vermont Department of Public Safety for reimbursement of storm cleanup expenses.
Okay.
And are there any other additions or changes? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of approving the amended agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, approval of the minutes of our August 14th, 2018 Select Board meeting.
So moved?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any amendments to our minutes as drafted?
Nope.
No amendments? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as drafted signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Citizen comments. Is there anyone who's here for something? Yes, ma'am.
Hi,
Hello.
I'm Chip Mayer, and I'm here to talk about the ongoing campaign, the 350 Vermont campaign, to get a climate solutions resolution on many towns' ballots for approval. And I guess 35 towns have already approved this, and I was surprised. I've been kind of watching it on the internet and getting involved and seeing that Middlebury hadn't done anything yet about this. And you know, it's our own Bill McKibben's organization here in Middlebury. It's the Shire town. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to join this campaign. So it's basically, we need the resolution, I think, because I guess back in 2011, the Vermont Department of Public Service did establish this comprehensive energy plan to set out to power Vermont by 90% renewables by like 2050. So right now, we're lagging in that. We're not doing very well with that. So this campaign is basically saying that we need to do more at the state and national level to decarbonize the atmosphere and build the momentum for renewables. And that's what this climate solution resolution campaign is all about. So it's basically about coming up with solutions to get Vermont off fossil fuels and to make a fair and equitable transition toward renewable energy, electric vehicles, improved public transportation, and no more fossil fuel pipelines. So it's basically about towns making the commitment to do all they can to move Vermont toward the renewable, to make us a renewable community. So I guess I don't have to tell everybody about what's going on. I mean, the climate is warming, the planet is warming, the climate is changing. But I saw a video from Bill McKibben recently where he said that language is just not okay anymore. We're in a climate crisis. And I think when you look at the news and you see what's going on, the fires, the floods, the stronger storms, the droughts, the rising sea levels, the heat waves, the Arctic ice breaking up. I mean, it's just very clear that it's a crisis now. It's not, that things are changing. So anyway, I would just hope that Middlebury would join this campaign. And it's the more towns that pass this resolution, the louder the message it will be that to our state, as well as here in Middlebury, that we're ready for action, that we want to actually do something proactive and meet this challenge and this crisis. And the reason the 350 campaign is trying to get a bunch of towns to get it on the ballot for November, because the new legislators who are elected will also have a kind of a nice sort of message from people. So if as many towns that can get it on the ballot now in November, the new folks coming in our legislature will hear that message and know that that's something that's important to us. So I'm asking the board, the select board, to actually go ahead and put it on the November ballot.
Okay, so let me try to break this down in
Yeah.
a few things. We don't actually put things on the ballot ourselves.
But you can, right? I mean, it's
We're not
possible.
going to.
Okay, so you're
I
not
don't think
going
that's our process. We've agreed to a process that's participatory and
Mhm.
and it generates from coming up and showing significant interest from the community. And so we've actually got a form and a process that we can get to you so that we follow the process that we've agreed to establish. And I think that unless I speak outside of the board's desires, that I really think we need to continue to follow the process and not make exceptions, no matter how good the cause is and how important it
I
is.
guess I was hoping for the exception given this, but I understand what you're saying.
I understand you made a powerful argument, but we do have a process, and we
Mhm.
do like to follow the
Okay,
process.
well, I thought I'd take my shot at it.
And, well, you got some good visibility for the cause, and if you would care to establish that as a project and maybe be a lead person on it,
Yeah.
that's how we get things going here,
Yeah.
so.
So,
so-
Kathleen, you're going to talk?
Just briefly, the select board usually requires a signed petition
Right.
by 5% of the voters. And on Bill McKibben's website, there's a handy petition all made out. You just fill in the name of your town and you can pass that around. 5% is about 225,
Yeah.
I think, voters.
Okay.
And
So it
given
wouldn't,
the schedule for November, the select board the town clerk actually would need to receive that petition no later than September 10th.
yeah, and that's why I was asking for this kind of exception, because that's probably not going to be able to happen at this point. So maybe for town meeting.
That'd be a good target.
Mhm.
Well, town meeting is the appropriate time, I
I
think.
think it's an opportunity for people to have discussion
Mhm.
on the floor before they vote on it.
Mhm.
It's probably a better
So it
venue.
would be a vote at the meeting, or would it be
There's
on the
a couple-
ballot?
two ways to do that. That would probably be have some discussion and then a vote.
It would be an article voted at the ballot.
Australian ballot?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. But can be talked about at town meeting, obviously, yeah.
So I'd just like to comment on it, because Chip approached me about this, and I thought it was great that, there is a concern, and the resolution reinforces a lot of the work that the town of Middlebury is doing, and I explained to Chip that we do have an energy committee that's very committed to reducing our carbon footprint, and that this would reinforce it, and that we could, as a select board, put this on if we wanted to, but that it is good to have a network of conversation with people
Mhm.
about it. So
Mhm.
I'm just thinking about the timing again, because you
Mhm.
stated that you wanted the legislature to have
Yeah.
the
Yeah, I mean, that was, that was why I was hoping the
message
exception.
before it
but
started,
yeah,
but
but sounds like.
I suspect they do have the message.
I think they-
you have a fairly forward-looking legislature, and you shouldn't shortchange them in that regard. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, the campaign was hoping
See.
for a few more towns for the ballot, just to give it a little more impetus, but, and that's why they said you can go to the select board, they may or may not do it, so I was just hoping you would. but
I would agree that we
understand.
do need to accelerate our efforts, and that
Mhm.
the heat waves especially are concerning. And I know in my early research on climate change, that was the one that
Mhm.
we were most worried about. And the
Yeah.
data is showing that even at night,
Yeah.
it's not cooling the way it used to. And that's a
Right.
real
And in-
silent issue that we haven't addressed.
Right. And in the resolution itself, it says, whereas extreme and erratic temperatures, increasing severe storms, a rise in tick-borne diseases, and threats to farmers and maple sugar makers. So there's a lot, you know,
Well, it will change, definitely, but I think that what we're seeing with the Economic Health Committee and other committees is that maybe we can adjust for that climate change by producing other crops, but we're still gonna be left with consequences that are gonna be difficult, and we need to have emergency preparedness for these events,
yeah.
these storm events.
And I'm also hoping for proaction, such as that we're not responding to emergencies all the time, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and,
Well, thank you.
you know, I think we target town meeting if that's
Okay.
an opportunity.
Yeah, that would
And
probably
I
be-
think that a continued emphasis as opposed to a one-time shot, I know they want to get more towns on that ballot, but, you know, legislature is still in session at town meeting time, so,
Okay, all right, thanks.
thank you. Is there anyone else here for something that's not on the warrant agenda? Okay, hearing none. This is for the Select Board discussion of correspondence with the Vermont Agency of Transportation regarding the tree removal, Forest Ridge, and Chris is here.
Sorry to interrupt, we skipped over
4A.
4A.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Yes.
Blue spruce.
So, briefly, in response to many, many inquiries about what can be done about getting what remains of the mostly burned-down Blue Spruce Motel cleaned up sooner rather than later, we contacted Town Attorney Benj Putnam, and he advised that the Select Board, acting as an interested party in the matter, may authorize the town manager to lodge a complaint with the Development Review Board, DRB, about the lack of maintenance which has given rise to any or all of the following conditions. I'm quoting from the zoning bylaw here. 1, a threat to public health or safety. 2, an undue adverse impact on aesthetics of the neighborhood and surrounding area. And/or 3, an undue adverse impact on neighboring property values. Once a complaint is received under Section 753 of the town zoning and subdivision regulations, the DRB may hold a hearing to determine whether a structure has been abandoned. If the DRB determines that the structure has been abandoned, it may, consistent with the purposes of the town plan in this ordinance, order that the abandoned structure be secured, repaired, or removed at the expense of the owner. Just wanted to bring that to you as a follow-up to our last meeting.
Right, and I think we're all getting a lot of questions. This is non-punitive in nature, correct? It's administrative
This would be,
as far as the establishment of it?
the first step would be for the zoning administrator to reach out to the owners of the Blue Spruce to see if we could settle, make an agreement, negotiate an agreement for addressing the issue. Absent that, they would advance to a public hearing, and the zoning board would hear from the public and from the landowner as to what could be done to address the issue.
Questions?
Well, no, I think this is fine, and if, whether it's the owner or, as has been suspected, that maybe it's insurance carrier is delayed, this will give the owner potentially some ammunition to say, we have to resolve this. So, I mean, for all the reasons that are cited here, it's why it has to go. So I'm all for this, and I'd be willing to make the motion.
See if there's any other comments or questions first. Go ahead.
Okay, so make a motion to authorize town manager Kathleen Ramsey to lodge a complaint with the Development Review Board about the condition of the Blue Spruce Motel pursuant to Section 753 of the town zoning and subdivision regulations.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any last comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Well, thank you, Kathleen, for researching that. I think it has been a general desire to at least encourage them to try to come to a settlement and get the
Nudge it.
southern entrance to Middlebury cleaned up. Now we're with Chris. And so Chris came up with a planning scheme that I think satisfied the residents, Chris and Kathleen. Actually, Kathleen did a little brainstorming and came up with a really
Had a great idea.
good idea. And I think Chris, you're supportive of it. You think
Yes.
it'll work?
Although I've never transplanted a sumac, all I've ever done is cut them down. So we will have to see on that. I have no idea how extensive their root system is on a smaller sumac, but we'll give it a shot.
Okay.
And we've got a source for the junipers, although I could only come up with 18 of them.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and it, so if everybody's had an opportunity to read that letter to Dan DeLabriere, the V-Trans Rail and Aviation Program Director we've been working with, we did send a copy of this, Kathleen sent a copy of this to Susan, who had come and spoken in support of the neighborhood and had worked on it. She's here. Okay. Do you have any comments on it, Susan?
So Chris, just one question, is the junipers being donated as well then?
No, I think we have to buy them.
The budget, we have a budget.
Did you only had 18 of them or something? I missed that.
I could only find 18 for sale.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
thank you. That's all.
Are there any other comments are there any other citizens here that have been involved in that?
Nobody else came, so I think that means usually means they're.
Generally supportive of it,
Right.
okay? All right.
I'll move it, that we approve our select board letter to V-Trans Rail and Aviation Program Director, our director, can't say his name, Dan, outlining the proposed planting plan and budget for the Forest Ridge Drive.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Chief Hanley's here to request sole source procurement of tasers.
We've been equipping our officers with tasers now for 3 years, and it was a multi-year process, so we, not buying everything all at once, so they all get old at once, and then we're looking for a capital expenditure. There's only one company that makes them and only one company that sells them. There is another company that makes a similar type device, but I don't know much about them. They're not in very wide use, and they don't have a good reputation, so just as soon stay away from the other company. So as far as sole source goes, they're the only place you can buy one. You deal directly with the company. This will end our purchases for these for at least the coming 2 or 3 years before we start cycling out the old ones. This program that we're getting into now is a little bit different than the one we were under before. This one is a single price over the course of 5 years, and with that comes everything you need that goes with it. The training cartridges, batteries, everything that goes with these devices are as part of this purchase, and it's unlimited. Right now, we individually buy each unit. Part of that purchase price is an annual payment for 5 years for the replacement of that. So we'll maintain that with the units that we have, and at the end of the 5 years for each, we'll have money with the company to then put toward any replacements. With this, it's a 5-year purchase, so you get 5, and that will end the inventory that we have.
Questions of chief? Pleasure of the
Seems
board?
sensible. All right, I'll move it. That we award the contract to Axon under our sole source purchasing provision of the town purchasing policy for the purchase of 5 taser units and related equipment for the police department for a total cost of $3,826 for year 1.
For year 1.
Yeah, we'd be required to sign a 5-year contract
Right.
with that, so.
It'll be
Okay.
that price for 5 years.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
For a total cost of $3,826 per year for the next 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Moved and seconded. Any questions of Chief? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Dave Hallam's here to talk about next steps for the Powerhouse site.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dave.
So I was here earlier this summer and I was asking for approval for Lincoln Applied Geology to do the next phase of testing, which was to take 3 samples along the pathway adjacent to the David Page cotton mill to see if there was any further contamination. They did that at the end of June and supplied a report on July 11th and sent it to Kathleen in the state of Vermont. And there are no additional contamination, so they've we have now limited the geography of where that contamination is. So the next step is for Lincoln Applied Geology. This is all part of state statutes, that the various steps we have to go through. They have to come up with an evaluation of correction action alternatives. In other words, now, what are the various ways that we could address the contamination issue? The state, when we were there visiting the site with the state in May, indicated that they thought probably the final solution will be to just some additional fencing and signage. There are more drastic measures that can be taken, but the state indicated, and we agreed with it, that they didn't think it was necessary. But we have to go through this next step of creating these 3 or 4 different alternatives. We'll then submit it to the state for their approval, and they'll say, okay, we want you to do solution B or C or whatever it is.
So it's their decision as to.
It will be their decision in the end. Now, we're assuming, because they did state that additional fencing and signage was probably going to be the answer, I can't tell you that that's the way it's going to end up until we finish this next phase of the work and they take a chance to review it. This evaluation of the various alternatives is a $2,000 bill. I think we have it in the budget, so it's not a budget impact. It's already been planned for. After that, when the state comes back and says, okay, go to Plan A, they'll come up with a corrective action plan, in other words, how to implement it. At the same time, I probably will go out and get some estimates as to what that will cost. I anticipate that will all happen between now and I'd like to think we can get that estimate before, I'd like to try to get it before town meeting day so we can get it in next year's budget. So that the whole thing would be done by next summer, I would hope. But anyway, I'm here to see if you'd approve the additional $2,000 to take this next step.
Questions of Dave?
Yeah, you've steered us right so far, so there's no reason not to.
Yep, we
Pleasure
need to
of the board.
complete it. We need to complete it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make
So-
a motion to award a contract to Lincoln Applied Geology in preparation of an evaluation of corrective action alternatives for the David Page Cotton Mill site. Total cost of $2,000.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
So Aaron's back to present the refinement of Merchants Row one-way design concept, and let you walk us through what
All right, good evening.
changes you've made here.
So I was here 2 weeks ago, and at that time, the board had voted to permanently turn Merchants Row into a one-way street up the hill toward the east, would be the flow of traffic. The figures that we had 2 weeks ago showed one-way traffic with diagonal parking on both sides of the street for the length of the street. So this is a revision. This shows wider sidewalks on the eastern side of Merchants Row, both in front of the Patel Block as well as in front of Board and Insurance, the Baptist Church, and the site of the diner, which is Town Hall Theater property. The parking spots that are adjacent to the Village Green, the Triangle Park area are now parallel spots, where they were diagonal spots before. In this alternative that is in front of you here, which is the only one that we sent back, we eliminated the mid-block crosswalk for reasons that we talked about 2 weeks ago. Low speeds, traffic moving in one direction, and then kind of just the general nature of folks as they get out of their cars being, walking across the street wherever their cars are parked. There are still crosswalks at either end of the block for folks that do want to use the crosswalks. I guess a couple of other things to point out that probably should have pointed out last time. There is the crosswalk that goes across the top of the Patel block has been shifted outward. That was partially accommodated by the wider sidewalks. This allows for better sight distance.
That's good.
Of cars that are coming here, so folks can see there. On the intersection with Main Street, the bump outs that are shown here allow for a shorter crosswalk, which would be safer from a pedestrian standpoint. This configuration also eliminates what was previously an apex crossing where you've got out there today, currently the sidewalk that goes across Merchants Row and goes across Main Street originates at the same point. It's difficult for drivers to see when there's somebody standing there which direction they're heading and which crosswalk. So this separating those crosswalks allows drivers to identify which direction pedestrians are crossing. There was a little bit of discussion last time about elimination of this green strip. We've left it for now. This is current day condition out there. Potentially that could be modified, but that is the way it is configured today out there. I guess I'll pause there and ask, are there any questions?
Can you just go through the parking spaces for the people, because we had a lot of discussion about parking impact.
Yeah, I think I don't have the number off the top of my head. I think it's 40, I think Jim had
It's either 44 or 45.
45 spaces here. I believe we did get another one spot along in front of the Patel block, and then we converted the diagonal spaces in front of the Triangle Park area to these what are now
Parallel
6
parking, yeah.
parallel spots. So I think this could be an area where they stay parallel spots, or the town could designate that as a loading zone at certain times of day and at the risk of concern.
Or drop off, yeah.
These could be designated as a loading zone at certain times of day. There was some concern last time we talked about deliveries to some of the area businesses.
Would
But
you- yeah.
that decision could be made at any time.
Let me see if the select board has anything first. Questions of Aaron, anyone?
I like the reworking. I definitely support the wider sidewalk, and I like the crosswalk handling for safety. I asked myself, if I'm a cyclist, where do you want me to go? So am I in the road? So are we putting sharrows there? Are we having a buffered area? And the reason I ask that is because some people do, it's uphill, so it's hard, to be in the road there. I've done it many times. So I could dismount and I could walk my bike on the sidewalk. That's an option. Or do we create a buffered area, and where would that be? So that makes me think about the way we treat the extended sidewalk. Like, is it curbed or is it level with the ground, so it could potentially kind of morph into a buffered area?
It would all be curbed sidewalk,
Uh-huh.
and part of the discussion last time was about more space to be used by the businesses. And so in that instance, you'd want the curbed sidewalk, provide the protection from vehicles. Without the curb there, vehicles can roll,
Roll,
beyond
okay.
that.
All right, well, that answers that. So, so you're shaking your head when I say the cyclist goes in the road, right? So it's basically what we've taught people to do on Main Street too. You either choose to be a motorist and you're claiming the road, or you're a pedestrian, you're walking your bike on the sidewalk.
I believe in this instance, yes, that would be the plan, to share the road. It's tough with the limited space between the curbs.
Okay, so that was one question I asked myself, like, how would I navigate that? And the other thing I think about in terms of parking, and this is a broader thought, is about bike parking. And I know some towns are considering parklets that are designated areas where you could do bike parking, and you can get 6 bikes into a parking space, or two parking spaces. So I think about that too, and I know that we might have flexibility for playing with that down the road if we decided we wanted to do something like that, there or another location downtown. But, it's just something that I thought about too, as I'm looking at this schematic. And because it's uphill, again, the topography doesn't really lend itself as well to it.
Sure,
So
yeah.
maybe it's not claiming any of the parking spots, but maybe it's somewhere on the grass.
Yeah, I'm wondering, would it
yeah.
be off limits to
Yeah.
put some parking, bicycle racks on the park area right behind there, or something like that?
Yeah, and so, and again, I think about, well, where's the drop-off for vans and Actor as we go forward, and that's a different conversation, but I like that we've created the parallel parking where it is, because we can look at how we want to use that space going forward
Right.
as shared
Yep.
use. I think that's all I have.
Okay, anybody
So
else?
far.
Victoria?
I was just wondering about the crosshatch space next to the bump out. Why is that necessary? Why can't that be a parking space?
It's
There-
accessible.
There's 2 places like that, and they're adjacent to the handicap spots, and so it allows for accessibility into and out of handicap vehicles.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I was away for last meeting, so I did the discussion on the wider sidewalks. You say for businesses to use, but I mean, are they expressing a desire to have, what,
So,
giving up several spaces?
some of the discussion, Victoria, was where we lost the spaces wasn't necessarily the wider sidewalks. So we asked them to look at 6 and 10-foot additional wider sidewalks, is trying to create more pedestrian-friendly zone in the center of town. Discussion about that provides opportunities if cafes wanted to have tables out or merchants wanted to have racks out. But because when we went to single lane, it gave us a little bit more latitude at extending that sidewalk. They studied it, and Aaron didn't really cover that, but 10-foot was a little too wide, because then it made the travel lane and cars that were backing out, and I only know this because I went through it with Aaron, but it made the cars down where you see that there's parallel parking, when you first get onto Merchants Row, it was too tight to make that swing and make it, and have the visibility and everything, and so that's why they've come back to us with the 6-foot extended sidewalk option.
And do the businesses along Merchants Row prefer a sidewalk, 6 feet of sidewalk over more parking for their customers?
So let me just address the parking piece of it. I think Brian made a very good point in that. I didn't bring this up before, but last time we talked about this, there was the angled parking, diagonal angled parking along this area here. Maybe there was a couple of additional parking spaces, but the row between the cars was very, very narrow, and there were concerns with safety of that, with cars being able to back up, bicycles using the area.
Even without the wider sidewalk?
Correct,
Oh,
without
okay.
wider sidewalks,
Okay.
as well as delivery trucks, and I think it's common now that you might get somebody that stops there and runs in and comes back out from a delivery standpoint. So I think that was the first thing is we wanted to see a wider lane through there for the traveled way. That in combination with then looking at what's the right width for the sidewalks. Is it 6 feet, is it 8 feet, is it 10 feet? And that's where we got to with the width that we've got now for the travel lane, the parking, and then the sidewalk.
Thank you.
And the net loss, Victoria, is two spaces.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, maybe Jim is going to answer the question.
Well, just to Victoria's, question, the request for wider sidewalks originated with the ownership of the Patel Building and Town Hall Theater. So it was the local businesses who were asking for the wider sidewalks, which brought it to the select board's attention.
So a quick question on the number of parking spaces you just mentioned, we're gonna lose two, is that?
Two from having,
Gone to-
having the angled parking both sides.
What I'm concerned about, what do we have today, and are we gaining?
Oh, I think we're gaining
Oh, we're
from
gaining.
there.
Any
Jim, do you
idea?
know what we have today?
What we said, we-
Today on Merchants Row?
Not a lot.
I don't know the exact number.
I thought I heard we were gaining like 9.
25 to 30, somewhere in that ballpark.
Currently, pre-construction was more, I think from pre-construction, it's a handful of additional spaces, two to three maybe, something like that.
Yeah, we are gaining spaces.
That's what I was hoping.
It's a net gain, but two less than our maximum options that we considered.
And I just wanted to mention a point that was raised at the last meeting, and Karen spoke to this too. Some of the businesses didn't necessarily support the extended sidewalk, but some did. And what we needed to consider was the future too, and that we saw that it enhanced the vitality of the downtown to have plaza space, especially at the Patel block. And so we supported that direction. Some of the businesses were concerned that visitors get lost in the one-way traffic, so we had a lengthy discussion about two-way, one-way, and we came back to one-way because it was just safer, and it did give us these other advantages. So that's more of the background.
Well, we might also hope for a future where fewer people would drive downtown and come on foot. And I think the purpose of Merchants Row is, I think, a pedestrian place. With, we hope, shops and restaurants and so on, and where people would gather rather than to see it simply as a through street with a sidewalk on either side. And it is the center of town, really, and it needs to be protected, I think, for that use.
So, that's it.
Are there any other comments?
You've done what we've asked you to do, and you did it well, and you actually gave us more. There's a spot there for Laura's bike rack, I can see right in the little concrete section, right where by the Patel block. It's a really nice approach. I can see, as I walk through there at different times of the day, there's space there for the early morning delivery vehicles, there's space for the UPS and FedEx truck, there's plenty of places to park. But importantly, and to Victor's point, and Laura mentioned it as well, I see it as I travel all over the place. The trend is toward higher density town centers. It's more of the social interaction that comes with that, and you've given us a good base point for the future. So I commend you on your effort. I can't dispute what you have here. This is good. I like it. Good work.
So you want to make the motion?
I would like to ask one thing as we go forward, is we need to look at the condition of that sidewalk on where the green space is, and if that's anywhere near replacement, it'd be nice to have that, a really clean, consistent line, because I think we've got granite curbing going in there, and it just would keep the maintenance a lot, I think, simpler for our Public Works Department.
Agreed.
So it would be nice to dispense with that if we can, as part of the project.
Agreed.
Good point. Okay.
Ready for
Glad you
Pleasure of
mentioned
the board.
granite curving.
We voted on that a long time ago.
Yeah, we did. I'll move that we approve the Merchants Row one-way traffic flow design concept as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any final comments? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aaron, thank you very much for getting back to us so quickly on that.
Absolutely,
And,
yeah. Thanks for your,
Taking into account our requests.
yeah, thanks for your quick decision-making as well. Incorporate this into the design.
Good work. You get the job. Oh, you already have a job.
I didn't ask for money.
Just bring a chair up, yeah. Okay, so we have a,
Sorry, sorry.
have an
Take you out.
Sorry.
I know I need her. I know, right?
We're a team.
Yeah, no kidding.
So Nancy and Karen are here to review the update on the marketing activities that the Better Middlebury Partnership and Neighbors Together have been doing.
Yes, so we had not come back to this group in a few months, and we have been very busy. So we felt like this was a good time. We're sort of right in the middle of this year in terms of all of these initiatives. So we wanted to give you guys a chance to ask us some questions and also just share what it is that we've been doing with you and the results that we've seen so far. And then also what our plans are to carry us through the rest of the year. So to that end, I want to start with the summer series and block party. The summer series, it started to feel like if I had a hand in it, we were going to get rain at some point this summer. So we had a number of events that got rained out, or they were 60% chance of rain, and I had to make that call at like 2 o'clock, and then it ended up being beautiful, which was way more frustrating than just getting rain. But either way, we did get the concert that was rained out rescheduled, and that was held last Thursday, and that was wonderful. The Marble Works venue is absolutely perfect for an outdoor concert in the summer. We had several hundred people there. The band actually just emailed me again this morning thanking me for the opportunity and just said that they had had a really great time and wants to do it again next year. And so we have 2 more movies that are still licensed that we need to show. So we're going to show one. We're going to try to take advantage of the college students being back in session before it gets too cold. And we want to show one on September 14th, which is a Friday night. And it's The Greatest Showman. And there's no home football game that night, so we figured we would give that a try. And then the other one that we have a license for is Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and I'd like to try to roll that in with our Midnight Stroll in December and see about. I've spoken with Dustin about the idea of doing a childcare kind of evening, showing the movie, using that license for that, and doing that. So not the same as an outdoor movie, but I would say we learned some things. We're going to try to develop a few more partnerships, Parks and Rec being one of them for next year with movies, and we'll take it forward. But I think overall the feedback has continued to be really good about these kinds of events. Block Party was great. I saw many of you there helping even, which I really appreciate. So we had, I would estimate around 700 people. I'm terrible at estimating these things, but I think that was probably a fair guess. We had the sod come in and the sod go back out again. And it was, it added certainly a dimension that did not exist last year in terms of the layout and the timing for vendors and all of that. It definitely was a little tricky. That said, I've heard really wonderful feedback from the community, from merchants. There were a couple merchants that were a little frustrated with the road being closed, so you're going to get that from time to time as well, and we're working with those as well to see how we can sort of hear their perspective and make adjustments. But I would say overall it was very overwhelmingly positive. Anything to add about the block party? We had the raffle. The raffle winners were really thrilled. Kathleen actually won a raffle prize. Many people, many people, what we did was we purchased all of the raffle prizes from the businesses directly as part of this spending, and then we raffled off those prizes. So they had to have spent at least $20 in a local business in order to be able to enter the raffle. So it was sort of a double impact for those merchants. And we had a lot of folks enter the raffle, so that was really great. So overall, I thought it was a wonderful night, and I'm looking forward to doing it again next year. Any questions about that as I go forward?
No, just I would say the difference this year was the number of babies and families with young babies that could really enjoy the event.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Yeah, it was definitely, the one thing I noticed this year is there was actually a huge range in ages that were there. Which isn't something that we see at all of our events. So that was really cool to see that so many different people were out enjoying it. And I think they enjoyed different aspects of it, all of them. So it was neat. Okay, so the website. Kathleen, would you mind pulling that up? So, what you guys received in your packet for experience.middlebury.com is the design itself. It's not the content yet. So the content is actually being developed separately and then imported into the site. So these are all things that are continuing to happen as we speak. I had a lengthy meeting this morning with our web folks. But I wanted to give you guys a sense of how the website is coming along and what it looks like. As you may remember, the grant actually expires this coming Friday, which means that all of the invoices need to have been submitted to the USDA by Friday, which is going to happen. And we are planning to launch this site in the next couple weeks. So we basically have some fine tuning to do on the back end of things, and we have to do some marketing around it. But it looks way better than it looks on the screen. It's very vibrant, it's very fun, it has a huge focus on business promotion, event promotion, and just establishing Middlebury as a really healthy, vibrant community. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys the real deal. But these were just some photo images that the developers provided to me to share with you. Yeah.
Ross?
Will people be able to order from local businesses online?
No. Yes and no. So it depends on the merchant themselves and if they are set up for e-commerce. Many of our merchants are not set up for e-commerce. It's going to have a link directly to each website. So each of our businesses is actually going to have their own page within this website. And so on their page, they will have a banner image of their business. They have another image of their business. They have a write-up. They have their link, their phone number, their address, whatever they want to include in that. But this is not a store website.
It does seem that so much of web traffic is taking business from the brick and
Yes.
mortar, that if there's any way for your organization to help our local businesses sell online.
Yes.
You have welcome shop Middlebury, and you
Yes.
can do it at home right online.
Agreed.
That would be so great. and
Absolutely.
help them compete.
Yes.
with,
The biggest challenge that I've heard in response to that from our merchants is it's really about their back end process in terms of their inventory process and shipping and all of that stuff. And every business is so very different from every other business. But we are absolutely committed to that idea and willing to help whatever way we can to try to get them up, because I 100% agree with that concept.
And the important thing is the opportunity is there.
Yes.
So that's the good part.
Yeah. Any questions about the site?
So you're retaining the language Experience Middlebury and the font, so we still...
So the logo's the same. The Experience Middlebury logo is the same. The fonts have changed slightly from our old website. And the domain is the same, experiencemiddlebury.com. But this is very much a Middlebury community website. This is no longer a BMP website. So this is really not our organization's website any longer.
And is there a master calendar?
Yeah, so the calendar wasn't included in the photos that they sent me because they're still building it out, but that's on the homepage. Kathleen, do you see the homepage JPEG? So right there, featured events. So there's a running list of great photos for featured events, and there will be 3 to sort of highlight whatever, when you get to the homepage. When you click the featured events or any one of those, it would take you to their individual listings. But if you click the featured events, it's going to show you a calendar view as well as an image view of all of the events that are happening by date. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just mulling it all.
Sure.
Because it's a lot, and it's important,
Yeah.
I'm just absorbing it still.
It's also a huge website. From a content standpoint, I would say it's the biggest challenge that we have actually ended up facing is getting the business information from folks, just because there's just a lot of businesses here, and they have very different processes for getting information and communicating it to the folks who get it back to us. And it's been a multi-step process, much more so than I was initially expecting. And so we're still collecting photos from those websites or those businesses in some cases. But I would say we're about 90% there right now. So I'm very confident that the site will be up and live in a couple weeks. So.
Okay.
Is this final, or is this
This?
Yeah.
So design-wise, it is?
Well, I'm not impressed with the opening sentence, and I.
Oh, no, the
Or
content
the
is not.
The content.
The content is all dummy content.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right, well,
Yes.
I hope so.
Yes, the
because-
content is not. The design is final. The content is what it has to be. They just wrote stuff. We're pulling it in, the real stuff.
All right, I mean, I hope someone with some appreciation for the English language and its riches will,
So Community Barn Ventures is working on all of the content
all
for
right,
us.
all right.
So
Well,
Mary and Stacy are
will there
doing
be
it.
an opportunity to proofread it before it goes to press?
By me or by the select
Well, I
board?
would like to see it.
Sure,
Yes,
I'd
I
be
mean,
happy to
that
have you
will
see it.
help our town, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love for your eyes on it.
Yeah.
Isn't one of the advantages of this, though, too, that it's very easy for us to
Exactly.
update on the run?
Very
and
much,
keep-
yeah.
That's
keep
fine,
it up?
yeah, this
Yeah.
is not cast in stone. I mean, it can be
Okay.
changed
Any day.
constantly, so that's the beauty of it, so.
No, I realize that, but it seems to me that if we're presenting our town
Mhm.
to the
Agreed.
world, really, I think we need to do it in a, I mean, we're doing it in words,
Yes.
and words and pictures.
Yep.
But we have to be very careful
I agree.
about what we say.
Yes. And
how
that's,
we say it.
yes. And I was hoping to get it, the actual, I thought that they were going to pull the real content in before they sent it to me, but they did not, and I needed to get it to Kathleen by Thursday. So I apologize that it wasn't the real content yet, but we'll get there as soon
You'll
as
be
we can.
pleasantly surprised.
But I will send it, but I would love your feedback, so I will definitely send it to whoever wants it.
So on the town website, it says Town of Middlebury and then Vermont, is kind of there.
Mm-hmm.
So I notice we don't see Vermont because, and how important is that, to
Mhm.
see that? And so I'm thinking about that, and I'm thinking about the continuity of fonts
Mhm.
with the town website. This one, does it
Mhm.
matter? And then, of course, so I'm just, there's the Experience
yeah.
Middlebury logo, and it has a
Right.
font, and so for,
So the logo font doesn't need to match anything. It's the logo's the logo, so that's fine. In terms of the continuity between the Town of Middlebury site and this site, I think that they're totally different sites.
Yeah.
So one is the municipal site. It doesn't have any of the same content really. It's this one is really meant to sort of embody the community, and the municipal site I think is really about the town. Like committees and the governance and the departments of the town and things like that. So to me, I think that it's totally appropriate that they be separate brands, really. And this is really the kind of brand, I wish that the colors popped a little bit more in the images that they sent me, but the color scheme and the fonts that they chose, I felt like really represented the sort of overall image that we're hoping to project about Middlebury, which is that it is a fun, vibrant community, but we're not flighty, we're not flaky, we're not, it's not so over the top in the fun. It's the appropriate amount of that, it's still a serious community as well.
what about the word Vermont?
That's a good question, and I hadn't really thought about it too much. So,
Because there are a lot of, if you Google Middlebury, you'll get it,
Yeah.
right?
Connecticut.
yeah,
Connecticut.
certainly on all of our back-end analytics stuff, Vermont's going to be a prominent keyword. So when you're looking that up, I'm sure from a Google search, you will easily be, you'll be directed to the site for when you're Googling Middlebury, Vermont. Whether or not it has to actually be in the title is, I think, a question that we can debate a little bit.
So will there be links to things like the Ilsley site?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they'll have their own page actually.
Oh, they have their own page?
Yeah, all of the different organizations.
Where
will
do
have
you
their own.
access it?
So, if you head up, Kathleen, if you
That'd be
go all
under
the way up to the-
services.
yeah, so under services, there's a whole, and I don't know that services is going to stay. Like I said, all the content is still up in the air. But under that is where we have Parks and Rec, and actually Parks and Rec's also on the link on the homepage. But we have a number of things that are under all the different organizations. Will be there. Actor will be there.
If I'm not mistaken.
Calendar right there, switch to calendar view, you see it just below
Yeah.
the plants.
Right, so you can look at it as a calendar view if the link's not live, but if you looked at it, and then otherwise this is the image view of the same calendar.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Why don't you continue?
All right.
your stuff?
Yeah, okay.
Just on that one, just before we go, and it's maybe a phase two, but I go back to the fact that you go to Burlington and the weekends, it's Little Montreal.
Mm-hmm.
draw this.
The French
but
aspect,
we
yeah.
keep forgetting, I think, too often that we are unique into the country, and that there's a very few of us.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we across the country are next to the second biggest French-speaking region in the world. And if you go to Magog, just over the border, you can click on English or you can click on
Yep.
French. And, you know, they're us.
Yeah.
They're so much of our history, and to be able to invite them here is really just something I really want to put emphasis
It's a good point. So advertising campaigns, all summer we've done the hashtag #MidHiddenGem campaigns. And so I don't know if anybody follows us on Instagram, but these are a few examples of what we've been doing, which if you'll remember what we were sort of set up to try to do is highlight some of these sort of hidden things that you can find or do or eat in Middlebury businesses or that you can experience in Middlebury. And so we've really sort of made this huge master list of ideas that we continue to add to and have been Instagramming them.
Sandwich looks good.
I know, right? It's at Otter Creek Brewing. So anyway, this has been something that's been really popular, and the businesses have given us really great feedback. And this is something, even though we were funding this with USDA money, I'd really like to keep this concept going because it's been really well received. And I think we can incorporate this idea of hidden gems sort of throughout everything else that we do. Nancy and I were just talking about how Middlebury is very much a sort of nooks and crannies kind of town, especially the downtown. And I think that can be seen as a detriment sometimes for folks that want to find everything in one place. But I think we need to start flipping that idea around and have that be an asset to us, that you can really get out and explore and discover and find new things and, have this whole idea of hidden gems kind of incorporated in a lot of our branding. We also have 2 more advertising campaigns that have not started yet. So one of them is the sort of focus on local and creating those local connections through advertising with some of the merchants and business owners, as well as how your dollar ends up trickling through the local economy. So that's one that's coming up, and that's going to run through Christmas. So I'm still working on figuring out exactly the start date, but it'll start this fall and go through the holidays. And the second one is that winter attractions, tourist-based advertising campaign. You want to?
No, why don't you finish your
Oh, you want me to keep going? Okay.
Yeah.
So mid-money match. I will say we had a Neighbors Together meeting last night, and what I said to that group and told them that I was going to tell you the same thing is that in all of our research we could not find a single instance where something like this, a town-wide local shopping rewards program, has ever actually been implemented. And after trying to implement it, I can say I sort of have a little bit more of an understanding as to why that is the case. So, it's become much clearer to us at this point that when we set out to do this, which I still think is so valuable, but when we set out to do it, we identified the sort of doing it and working the bugs out as one of our goals for this whole thing. And so we have learned a whole lot. Specifically, as I referenced before, one of the biggest challenges has been communication with the businesses, because the email that I might have is like the top level. The person that Nancy sees when she walks in is someone at the desk or the counter. They may not speak to each other about it. No one knows what we're talking about when we then go to drop off the stickers, times 175 businesses. So it has been a little bit of a challenge just to get everybody sort of on the same page. So one of the things that we decided to do is we're going to have some merchant meetings specific to this, as well as just sort of an update as to Neighbors Together and going forward with ideas. And so I've scheduled the first meeting. I'm working on places for the next 2. We're going to do them in the next couple weeks, invite everyone. We're going to do a breakfast one, a lunch one, and a dinner one. We're going to do one over on Route 7 North, one in the downtown area, and one over on Exchange Street. And the idea being just trying to get as many people in the same room as possible to explain, answer questions, really just try to get people excited about this whole idea. But that said, we did launch the program during the block party. I think only 3 full carts have been turned in, but many people are working on them. So I do see them. Many of the merchants are have displays now, which is nice. The downtown merchants in particular. Becky has a great display at the bookstore. And so, I would say we have varying degrees of participation at this point, but we're definitely working on getting it all, everybody's sort of on the same page.
Well, and we had a little stumble too, trying to get all the materials to all the people, which is, as we said, 175 businesses. Not all of them are participating in this, but we will have something in the newspaper too. But we really wanted it, a few of the bugs flushed out before we really advertised it, so we knew a little bit more how we could do this.
Right. And also, this wasn't sort of a one and done. We really want to continue this concept, and so we really feel like whatever we can learn and however we can streamline this and get merchants excited about it and businesses excited about it, that's all considered a success. So I'm still optimistic about this. I think we just have, it took us a little bit longer to really get it going than we initially expected it would. The brochure that we had been talking about, I had put here, the update was we had received one quote to have the brochure designed. I was waiting on the second. I got the second one today. So we'll be submitting those quotes to the town and then moving forward based on, I think they're both under $3,000, so I don't believe they need an RFP process. So that, and the brochure will follow the same branding as the website so that we have a consistent look and feel.
I think too, everything that we've tried to do this year has been infrastructure, or we call it infrastructure, because it's all things that we see will be built upon and hopefully remain in place. So it's not, this is definitely the building year, getting our feet on the ground solid. One of the things that we've done is what we were calling the beautification public art, and we've changed that now to the creative economy. Because that really is what it is, and plus what we're trying to do is promote the economic well-being of the whole town as well as accessibility, and so that creative economy piece works. We had a change in the fence art. Claudia Carl is the artist, and we got that done an hour before the block party, so that was good. And and we are still dealing with the flowers, and so I think and people seem very responsive to that it looks nice, and there's an effort going on down there. We're going to be meeting next week more about parking and signage for accessibility, because we know that's a piece that also needs a little help, and we have a team that's working on that, and Kathleen set up a meeting for that with Chief Hanley and Bill Kernan as well, so try to figure out some of that part. Going forward, we have the downtown Wi-Fi, which I'm very excited about this, and we should be having a meeting in the next couple weeks with the actual layout of and the area that we can cover downtown for public Wi-Fi, as well as how much, what the equipment costs will be, so we can further fine-tune things for our next submission to the AOT for grant monies for next year, because we're looking at Wi-Fi as being one of our main things that we want to do. So that, and been very impressed with who we're working with in that. And as Eric Davis talked to you last time with about the tax-free holidays, he's done a lot more on that. And we have an opportunity, we're going to be meeting with the governor. The governor's going around and his cabinet are coming to, or they are visiting all the different counties, and they're visiting here on September 11th. So we are going to be meeting with them about Neighbors Together, as well as the tax-free part of it, and Fred Kenny's setting up, or is sort of in charge of that, and then Eric has dealt directly with the governor's office on that. So I think that's all very good. We're also, as I just said, we know we have to present a budget to them, as we did this last year. And so we are going forward, we are obviously going to assess what we have and continue with some of the programs that we have, because as we said, that these are just building areas, as well as we know Wi-Fi has been accepted as something that we all definitely want to go forward with. And the other thing that we are developing a set of criteria that we will open up to the public if they have ideas on how they would like to join Neighbors Together with a specific project, as long as it fits these criteria, which we will, they're all being vetted and we're being developed right now. And as well as an implementation plan, who's going to be doing it and all that, but to join us, because there are some ideas that have come forward, people think that would be really helpful and the criteria would certainly involve economic development, accessibility, and all the things that came out of the forums. But we will keep you apprised on that. But that's what our thinking is now, to make sure that it continues to be grassroots and people are involved in it.
And we don't want to be the only ones putting forth ideas. There are a lot of ideas, and I think that's the beauty of a group like Neighbors Together, is that it represents at this point so many different organizations and businesses, and we want to, and really all of the initial ideas for 2019 were generated by the community. So we could continue along with the ideas that were already generated, but we know that there are others out there as well. So we really just want to make it as much of a community grassroots effort as possible.
That's it.
All right.
We got.
That's it.
Phil, thank you for the update. We know you're doing a lot of stuff. It's certainly seems to be well appreciated by the townspeople, that they've been coming to the events and supporting them, and which is what we're asking everybody to come downtown.
Mark.
I'm looking to move on the agenda
I
unless you have
know.
something important.
Karen, you're very well spoken and covering so much in such a compact amount of time. I do appreciate that. Nancy, does Neighbors Together have a regular meeting time? And what
Yes.
is it?
We meet on the last Monday of the month from 5 to 6.
Okay.
And we start at 5 and we end at 6.
So whether it's a fourth or a fifth Monday, it's always the last Monday?
It's the last Monday.
Okay. And have you given any thought to benches that have chargers in them?
You know what?
No, but
Okay.
You can put that in if you want to fill out.
No, I'm thinking
down.
of
No.
more connected with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Oh,
It's a
I
good
thought
idea.
you were coming up
It's a
with
good idea.
something else. So.
And certainly email us. I
Yeah.
mean, at any point,
Okay.
you let us
Yeah.
know if you have ideas, if you, and I just want to, the last thing, I know you want to move on, I just want to say, I really appreciate all of your support in everything that we've been doing. We really couldn't do these things without the support of the Select Board, and in particular, I want to thank Kathleen, who has been incredibly supportive of our efforts every step of the way, has really kind of cleared the way for us to do a number of things, and it has made it so much easier for us. So thanks to all of you.
Yeah, thanks.
So Ross, we'll get to discussion about the renewable energy policy proposal.
Yeah, there's two items I wanted to bring to the Select Board this evening. Good evening. One was a proposal for renewable energy policy, and the other is a way to make use of funds that were approved at town meeting. As you probably may or may not remember, last year $10,000 was approved, and we used those funds to do audits of the rec department and the police department. And so we'd like to use the $10,000 that were approved this year to get some work done based on the results of those audits. We would like to spend up to $1,000 at the rec department for a smart thermostat and miscellaneous air sealing projects that were identified in the audit, and up to $9,000 for the police department for either the wall-to-roof air sealing or multi-use 105 infill. I think that's insulation type stuff. And so it's my understanding, as a committee, we just come to you with recommendations.
Yep.
And so that's our recommendation, how to spend that money.
So Ross is on the energy efficiency improvements recommendations that came out of their audits, and they're asking for the $9,000 on the wall-to-roof air sealing and the $1,000 for the smart thermostat. Questions of Ross on that? Comments? Pleasure of the board, then.
I'll move that we approve the Energy Committee's renewable energy recommendations. Or not renewable energy, but your recommendations for spending the $10,000 as presented.
Second?
May I just
the energy consumption over the life expectancy of the product and what its life expectancy is. You know, will it last longer or shorter than another product? And that all weighs into how much energy is consumed, because one, it's a huge amount of energy just in the manufacturing of a product. And
Absolutely.
so, again, the intent is good. I'm just not comfortable personally with the language. It seems there's room for a little more clarity.
Well, if you have specific suggestions, I'm certainly open to them. The 10% it seemed like, the idea is that we need to get a little more serious about transitioning away from fossil fuels, as you heard earlier. It's a crisis situation here. And so, if we have to maybe spend a little bit more money than we normally would, it's probably a good investment, because the most expensive option will be not to do enough and deal with the consequences of more severe storms and droughts and floods and whatnot. So,
No, I get all of that. It's just a matter of how does that look to somebody, and a lot of manufacturers are really going that direction because that's what the consumers are demanding, whether it's in appliances or other equipment. It's just a matter of how can we judge, even somebody says they're more energy efficient than somebody else. Well, prove it to me. How do you, than a competing product? So again, it's clarity is what I just don't see in this, and it strikes me that it would really lend some headaches down the road to, in its current state, to those who have to obtain, supply, then review product submittals. So that's where my issue is with it right at the current state.
one of the things I can to maybe sort of address your concern is the Middlebury Energy Committee has offered to assist department heads in obtaining and contacting vendors and gathering that information and data for them so they can just review it and present it, or whatever. So that's one thing that the Energy Committee felt we could do to assist in this process.
Under the current group we're on there, but we can't be sure that we're going to have the expertise now or in the future to be able to objectively, especially when you get to technical products. So I'm not comfortable with it right now, but I applaud the effort in the direction you're going, but I'm not ready for it.
Well, I was just going to say that I listened to the Infrastructure Committee, and I thought that, it seemed reasonable that the Energy Committee was offering its expertise so that departments were not burdened, but assisted, and it's a policy. So, just like we know that we don't always get 3 quotes, we may not be able to get the information, but it's guiding, it's moving us in that direction, in a direction that we really need to go in with greater acceleration, and I think that's what I like about the policy. So we're still going to be stuck because we're not going to find it, but we should be trying harder, to explore the alternatives and get cost estimates on them. So.
Well, I think we can ask for that, but it's just a matter of, so now we started getting into things like 10%, and what does that mean? Becomes somewhat arbitrary. So to ask for that is a good thing to do, but it's then the evaluation that I really have some difficulty with.
Well, I think some of the language, though, isn't necessarily as strong. I mean, in this section 4, where you're talking about the 10%, it says a preference will be given. Well, we'll decide on that preference when the time comes. You know what I mean? It's not, to me, the language here isn't, isn't insisting that it has to be, if a product comes in within 10% of that we have to purchase that. That's not what, to me, this is not what it says. It's just sort of, reinforcing the idea that we want to move in that direction and that we're going to, make an effort to evaluate different products and think about them in terms of cost-benefit analysis. So I know what you're saying, though, but I don't think the language is so strong that we're going to get into that sort of quagmire that you're talking about. And also, I mean, just to reiterate, the department heads all looked at this, and they didn't seem worried about that language in that way. The only change that they asked for was that it not say, that the language not make it a requirement, but rather a strong preference. And they were fine with that. And I think they were fine with the idea of the Energy Committee helping.
Because it is a policy statement, I do find the 10% is a little odd in there, and yet we're saying that it's, frankly, I think I would rather rework paragraph 4 and make it simply that a preference should be given to alternatives that use more renewable energy sources or something like that, even if it's more expensive. We have shown as a board that we do that. I mean, we did it here to great expense in our own new town offices, and I think we use good judgment. I think we're all cognizant of the need to make good decisions. I don't think it's appropriate policy statement unless we're ready to lock in at that 10%, which does seem a little pulled out of the air. I mean, I do think that section could be reworked. Otherwise, I'm okay with the policy. As far as requiring us to review, consider, and assess the alternative, more energy efficient options. I just do think that we ought to be, if it's a policy statement, we either need to take more time with it or strike a guide that seems a little pulled out of the air.
Well, again, this is a recommendation from the committee, so
It
you're
is.
free to amend it in any way you want.
And I'm just saying, I could act on it if we amended it a little bit this evening. Otherwise, I would like to see that discussed a little bit further, because it is, policy should be prescriptive in nature, even though it does give latitude to make the right choice. And if you put 10% in and it comes in at 9%, then the policy statement says you should go with concern with number 4. I mean, I certainly have it. I heard it from Nick. But the intent seems to be something that we're all in support of. And if we could just make sure that when we put it into our policy book, it's more of a policy statement, I think is really what we're looking for. So just tightening up the language. Opposed? Please pass our gratitude on to Bill, too, for being on the ball and doing the legwork. Approval? Check. Little concern with number 4. I mean, I certainly have a little concern with number 4. I mean, I certainly have it. I heard it from Nick. But the intent seems to be something that we're all in support of. And if we could just make sure that when we put it into our policy book, it's more of a policy statement, I think is really what we're looking for. So just tightening up the language. Aye. Opposed? Please pass our gratitude on Bill, too, for being on the ball and doing the legwork. Approval? Check.
I will move to approve total expenditures in the amount of $4,451,978.63, of which $4,347,333 to accounts payable and $104,645.19 goes to payroll.